Hi everyone, thank you very much for stopping by and returning to the Old World. Over the weekend we've had the latest preview from Games Workshop. It's heralding the release of the Tomb Kings, and we get to look at a new centerpiece model, plus a few extra clues. What is this model? Well, it's the Necrolith Bone Dragon, previously a model only available to Tomb Kings through its War Master range. Now, appreciate the aesthetic of the new model isn't for everyone. I've never been drawn to the Tomb Kings personally, so my thoughts on the aesthetic probably aren't particularly helpful for the die-hard Tomb King fans or those hoping to get into that particular faction. However, we also learnt that the new Bone Dragon can be a mount for either a Tomb King or a Lich, both of which are said to interact strongly with the strategy phase. And that surprised me. Now, a weakness of the undead generally has always been movement, with the Tomb Kings being a faction heavily connected to what was the magic phase. I would have expected the Leech to have been used really as a buff to movement nearby units, so really interacting with the movement phase rather than the strategy phase. And a model that's there to buff movement and cast spells locally isn't the kind of model I'd normally expect to see riding a dragon, as it's a unit that wouldn't normally be expected to be seen in the heart of the battle line for a protracted period of time, being an absolute magnet for every rock, lobber and cannon on the field. So maybe the interactions with the strategy phase means that having a leech on a dragon is perhaps going to be a bit more tenable, a little bit more usable in the army, rather than robbing you of major advantages of your spells as the character moves at pace around the field. At this point, I think it's worth digressing into perhaps dragons a little bit more generally. Seeing a new dragon for me is, to be honest, a real positive. Dragons go to the heart of what fantasy imagery is all about, and they really precede the modern view of the genre as well, thinking of St. George or the Here Be Dragons legend on Old Map, showing there's always been this level of fascination with the concept of dragons. And I have been wondering how dragons will appear in Warhammer the Old World, how they play and what factions would get access to them, perhaps beyond the traditional factions like the High Elves, Warriors of Chaos, and obviously the Black Dragons of the Druchii as well. My initial thoughts on that topic is, as cool as dragons are, I didn't think we'd see an expansion of the number of factions that had them, and they were really prevalent over the history of the game. Virtually every faction had access to a dragon in some sense. Even the Empire with its Imperial Dragon sat in the Emperor's personal zoo. And I really didn't think we'd see dragons like the old Wood Elf Forest Dragon, the Green Dragon, making a reappearance. Although now, with the Bone Dragon coming into play, maybe some of these old classics will get a bit more of a look in and return to the fields. And to be honest, as much as I don't want the game to be Hero Hammer, dragons are simply too cool not to be those centerpiece models for a number of different armies, particularly if there's a number of different types of dragon available across the game. Coming away from the dragons just for a moment, what else did we learn from the preview? Well, officially not an awful lot, but there was an image in the video that they demonstrated which showed a number of the old skeleton and Tomb King models alongside the Bone Dragon. Now this suggests that for those particular units we will be seeing those old kits making a return. Yes, they are quite old kits, but if they are staying the same, that perhaps releases some time and resources available for other parts of the range to get a refresh. And we know from what they've said previously and from the Bretonnian releases that there will be a mixture of old and new models coming out in support of the various factions. What might these new models be? Well, personally I'd love to see some new skeleton horseman models. The other ones never really quite did it for me. Maybe some new chariots, that would be quite interesting. A review of the Screaming Skull catapult. Maybe even the giant snakes will become more elaborate and even more interesting than they were before. What new models do you think we might be getting on top of the Bone Dragon? Do let me know your thoughts in the comments below. All that remains to me to say is thank you very much for listening. I am returned to the old world. Have a great day.